So today we are looking at climate change in the Arctic. To understand the Arctic, you need to know what climate change is, which is just changes in the environment or the climates that are not normal for it, such as warm places are now having snow. Cold places are now reaching degrees of 100. That's not normal. Now there are solutions that we can provide for those, which is recycling, using cold water instead of hot water, solar power, turn things off when they're not in use, or even unplugging them. There's also things as carpool, and other things like that. Now to move on to the Arctic, this is a place that is a cold climate environment where that if anything changes, this can affect everything about it, the environment and the animals or mammals that live in this area. So what exactly is going on in this area that's, making climate change happen? Air temperature. The air is suddenly more humid, which is another factor. It is more warmer than it's ever been. It's actually one of the most warmest places in the world as of right now. We have permafrost and snow cover, which are two things that are decreasing instead of increasing, like air temperature and humidity. A lot of the ice caps are melting. There's less snow that is happening in the environment because of how the temperatures are so high. Basically, from 1940 until now, climate change has been happening, but since the 2000s, it's been the hottest it's ever been. So the temperature is obviously rising as more time passes. There are other factors that Walsh mentioned that Box did not mention. One of them I want to include is the differences between oceans, the ocean temperatures. There are some places in the oceans that are warmer, there are some that are colder, but each place is kind of getting warmer, which is not a normal thing. The ocean is very cold for the marine mammals of the environment, so obviously this is not a normal thing. Other factors that I did not talk about is storminess and cloudiness, which goes, I think, in foot with the air temperature and the humidity. Now, there are dangers that there are for any environment with climate change. There is this thing called the tipping point. It's the almost point where there's no return. It doesn't mean that there is no return. It just means that you're getting to that point where things cannot be reversed. But it does not mean that the things that you are doing now cannot be reversed. There are some things that cannot be reversed, such as CO2 releasing from the ocean and methane from the permafrost. Those are two things that have moved past the tipping point. They cannot go back. Now, what is the future of the Arctic? The thing is with the Arctic is the rising heat, the melting of the ice caps. It doesn't just affect the Arctic. It actually affects almost every environment in the world. And so with them kind of losing, the ice caps and their heat rising, it can in turn affect how the climate interacts with the environment. So it's very important for, all environmental people or people who really want to change the world and, solve the problem of climate change, that they need to focus on the Arctic to help other parts of the world. Now, effects of living things in the environments are very important. Now, we're going to look at marine mammals and the climate change. So how are they affected? We have infectious disease. We have, usually with the marine mammals in the Arctic, there's a host pathogen environment kind of pathway. And usually the pathogen latches itself on the host. The problem with is that they're not following that pathway. Most of the pathogens become stronger than the host, which can affect their survival rate, which is a very big problem. And it's because of the ocean temperatures and all such things. There are some body changes, nutrition problems. So with climate change and like how animals and mammals survive in the ocean, there's going to be a difference in the food web and the food chain because of that. Because some mammals are supposed to survive in certain temperatures of water, or some are supposed to survive on the ice caps and get their food there. But when those are melting and there's a problem, the food web is going to suddenly change because the way they get their food is not working, or maybe the food that survives on the ice caps is now, dying off because there are no ice caps. Some mammals are going to survive from the food chain, some are going to move up, some are going to move down, but there's no real certainty of that. There are some other changes with nutrition that can affect it, and actually the toxins that they're exposed to. So any toxin that they're exposed to in the ocean can actually affect their nutrition as well. It can actually also affect their reproductive system. So the amount of animals that are reproducing is not going to be the same. Now, all complex problems can have solutions. So what can the Arctic do to solve this problem? So what they can do is there's evolution of the Arctic living mammals or animals and other things. It's a very possible solution from research. But the problem is, are all species going to be able to live through climate change? We have no say in what animals are going to be able to survive, what genes they're going to get to survive through this new environment if we ever do pass the point of no return. So some animals may live and some may die, but there is a food web, and if some animals die that other animals need to survive on, it may not be a solution. It may become a bigger problem, but only time and data will tell. There are things that we can do for looking for early warning signs, coming through data, and the more data that we get and we get to observe, is the more likely we'll be able to figure out, oh, this is an early warning sign, and we can use this to stop climate change in the Arctic. Another thing is agents need to be mitigated. They're partially responsible for changes in the environment, but does that mean that they're going to work if we mitigate them, or is it just going to make things worse? There are so many solutions that we can do. It can be the general solutions I mentioned earlier about recycling, making sure to use renewable energy that's good for the environment, solar panels. All of that is very important when trying to save the environment, especially in the Arctic, because if we do not save the Arctic at this point, then the whole world is in trouble, like I mentioned, and it's very important for the Arctic to be helped as soon as possible.